1700s, Benjamin Franklin declared that wine makes daily living easier, less hurried with fewer tensions and more tolerance. 300 years later, and he's still right. Drinking wine has become a very common thing to do. In today's times, people drink it basically for pleasure. The pleasure can be achieved in many ways depending on one's knowledge on the subject. Some just drink it for the alcohol, and to be fair, I'm pretty much in that crowd. But I can also be the kind of person that can carry a conversation about wine or the enhancements it brings to food or special occasions. After working at a winery and learning all that I've learned about wine, I can see why some people can be intimidated by it. Yes, there are the wine snobs, but I don't let them discourage me from discovering and enjoying the pleasures of wine. Tonight I will cover 3 main points, and hopefully by the end of them, you will have some sort of interest in common grapes, famous grape growing regions, along with the process of making and tasting fine wine. If none of you care about grapes or geography or long boring processes, then stay tuned to my last point about tasting wine, for you should feel a little more sophisticated afterwards. So let's begin and dive right into the wonderful world of wine. As you know, wine comes from grapes, recorded to be the oldest fruit known to man. The Greeks and Romans were the first to develop wine from grapes and improve the trade. Eventually, the Romans carried viticulture through Europe, Germany, Italy, and England. Famous grape-growing regions in France like Champagne, Burgundy, and Bordeaux were well known for their creations of sparkling wine, Pinot Noir, and Merlot. Areas in Piedmont or Piemonte, Italy, and Tuscany, Italy, have produced popular wines such as Brunello, Barbera, and Sangiovese. The gold rush brought many vineyards to our state, creating a whole new type of wine. Because of the cooler and the warmer climates in California, major grape-growing regions are located all throughout the land. According to the author Kevin Rayleigh, California produces more than 90% of U.S. wine. If the state were a nation, it would be the 3rd leading producer in the world. It's a year-long process to make wine, but I'll break it down pretty short so you can see what these California winemakers have to go through. Different wine goes through different processes. White wine, sparkling wine, dessert wine, but I'll be focusing on how to make red wine. Of course, it starts in the vineyard. A farmer needs to be gentle with the vines as they can be very delicate depending on the type of grape being grown. Once they're grown, the harvest season begins. Grapes are clipped, collected, and carried into the winery where they are destemmed, crushed, and transferred into fermentation tanks. Skins and seeds stay in contact to give the wine that deep red color. Yeast is then added to initiate the fermentation process, turning the natural sugars in the juice into carbon dioxide and alcohol. After filtering the solids in stainless steel vats, the wine is pumped into wooden barrels in a process called racking. The winemaker chooses the different oak and ages to create different flavors, and after months of aging in the barrels, the wine is bottled and stored until it's ready to be sold. The bottles are then labeled, boxed, and shipped to consumers like us. Winemaker of 30 years, Chuck Hovey, says, "It's a lot of hard work and long days, but in the end, holding that finished bottle is always worth it if you know what you're doing." I didn't mean to do that. This is a bottle of Chuck's 2011 Petit Syrah. It's unlabeled because it's just been finished being aged for the last 18 months. We're just about ready to label it and sell it to the public at the end of February. I made it all sound a lot simpler than it really is. It's actually a very risky and time-consuming process just to get this. But when it's all finished, we can have a real taste of what comes next. Last weekend, at a wine tasting competition in San Francisco, hundreds of wineries from all over the U.S. were pouring their award-winning wines. When I asked the man behind the Bogle table if he could give me some pointers on how to taste wine, he laughed and answered with this statement: "Wine tasting is a science, kid. It requires a lot of time and study, but I'll give you some basic useful steps on how to tell what you're looking for." It was clear to me that he had been drinking, but I kind of got the gist of what he was saying. He broke it down for me, and it basically starts with what you see. You can tell a lot about a wine by the color of it. You can even tell if it has a higher alcohol content by carrying what they call the legs, which is the residue of the wine on the glass. As you take a swirling action, it helps aerate the wine to enhance the natural flavors. Inhale deeply in the glass, and you should be able to practically taste what you smell. This smells of berries and violets. Here comes my favorite part. I like to take a small whiff before I take my sip. You want the wine to roll around in your mouth, to have a full taste of what you're looking for. The flavor should stay in your mouth longer to tell the higher quality of the wine. A bitter component in red wine are called tannins. These give your cheeks a puckering sensation. You can pair these tannins really well with food and wine to make the food even better and the wine even better. Your tongue senses many components when tasting wine, and with a bit of practice and a lot of wine, you too can learn them all. In conclusion, wine education should be fun, not intimidating. We've covered where wine comes from, how it's made, and what to do with it. I hope at least some of you have enjoyed what I've had to say tonight. I'm nowhere near an expert in the field, but I do plan on continuing my education about wine and winemaking. Maybe I've inspired one of you too. Let me know if anyone wants to finish this bottle after class, and as the Gianelli Italian family says, salute.